Michael Larsen was a critically acclaimed hip-hop and rock artist and a prolific poet. He recorded with the bands Carbon Carousel and Face Candy and under the names Oliver Hart and most famously, Idea. Larsen died in his sleep on October 16th. News of his death rattled the local community as well as the underground hip-hop scene nationwide. The Daily interviewed Larsen in July 2010. In one of his last interviews, he explained the backlash he faced when he refocused his attention to jazz and rock projects, drifting away from his hip-hop roots.
Now, I got so much flack for doing that. I would get death threats and stuff thrown at me every day, and
you got
just
death
terrible.
threats for it?
Oh yeah, I've had multiple death threats. Yep, like letters that are written in fucking blood, saying, "When I see you, I'm gonna stab you."
Death threats for what? Being in a band?
Mm-hmm.
What the fuck?
Yeah, I mean, there's the famous story of we were playing a Face Candy show at Augsburg College here, and somebody threw a golf ball at me as hard as they could, and it cracked the window behind me. It didn't hit anybody, but they were trying to take off my head.
Was that recently?
Oh, that was years ago now.
Oh, okay.
See, what happened was I started the Face Candy thing, right? And we went on that tour, captured it all, recorded it all. I mean, people would wait around every single day. Someone would wait around to try to start a fight with me.
Mm-hmm.
They would intentionally stay. If I go to a concert that I don't like, I stay and say to myself or a friend, I'm not really into this band. These people would wait around to have a physical confrontation with me. They were so hurt and so confused. Why would somebody that won a Blaze battle when they were 17 years old, why a decade later would they want to start a different band? It was just ridiculous to me. And it really hurt my feelings.
Larsen spoke about taking his experimental projects to different venues where he was less likely to face scorn, but empathized with audiences who remained attached to his earlier work.
Like when I started the rock band that I have, Carbon Carousel, hip-hop people they couldn't even listen to it. They were disgusted. And so then I just said, fine, I'll just go play punk rock shows and venues.
Right.
And then it worked, So what I've learned is that it's very difficult for people to let go. I mean, even my family, who's very supportive and very open-minded about a lot of things, they don't even fully understand it. They still classify me as a rapper. My grandmother will be like, she won't say my grandson's a musician. Even though she knows that I am. She knows
right.
that I've been playing piano since I was 2, but she still does that. So it's almost impossible for even my friends and family to see me as an actual full artist. So it just I understand why some 15-year-old kid who just discovered the Blaze battle and it makes him feel empowered. See, that's what I've learned about some of that battle stuff is obviously some of it is pretty funny at times, which is great. To be able to make or be involved in some type of music that it makes people laugh is amazing. I mean, I also do stand-up as well, and I've been working on a whole different scene of actually getting my jokes together, and I'm really going to start in the next year working my stand-up routine because I've always written jokes. I just never, and I would maybe slide them into Idea and Abilities performances as banter or something, but I'm really, really digging into that this year.
I mean, I almost feel like even when you're battling, that's a form of performance art in and of itself.
Mhm. I agree. And see, what's cool about it is empowering to some people because sometimes people, especially teenagers, they just feel really rejected and bored and all that stuff. And then when they see somebody who's around that age, kind of just exploding and being, I didn't take shit back then, when people would come up to me, I mean, I used to make money in high school by battling. And that was the time, when, like I said, finding people who actually record, perform, and do music, it was more rare, just the times were different, just to have a studio. There wasn't home studios back then,
Yeah.
The guy who had a home studio is the guy who spent $40,000 on equipment. Now anybody can make a record for about $200,
While Larsen said it was easy for him to break away from the battle rap circuit, His fans felt betrayed.
I didn't care if I lost or not. It was so meaningless to me. And that's one of the reasons that I won a lot of them, is because I was really relaxed and wasn't, battles are head trips. People walk around backstage at that New York Blaze battle. There were people walking around backstage going like, the girl wins, otherwise you get your ass whooped. When I won the Chicago one, the first dude that I beat wouldn't shake my hand, and that was hosted by Dougie Fresh. He wouldn't shake my hand in front of everybody, and everybody was like, boo, because he was like being a dick, and they were just like, don't be a dick, the whole audience. And it was like a 90% black audience in Chicago. It was great. And he felt really bad. He didn't like the idea that he just got beat by a little white kid. And so anyways, later on, he wouldn't shake my hand on stage. Later on, a couple rounds into it, maybe an hour later, he comes up to me backstage at the Metro, which is kind of this complicated little version of tunnels and stuff. There's a lot of places you can be backstage where like you're alone essentially, like some pretty drastic shit can go down there without people knowing about it, Anyways, he reaches out to shake my hand, and I'm like, oh, cool, that's nice that he's finally like cooled down or whatever. When he grabs my hand, he grabs me, squeezes my hand as hard as he can, pulls me to his body, and he's grinding his teeth and looking me in the eyes, and he's like, listen, motherfucker. It's like, this is my goddamn city. He's like, you go ahead and win all this shit. You go ahead and win this little battle, but just so you know, I'm taking everything from you. And he's like, my crew's waiting for you right outside, so go ahead and win your little shit, but we're fucking you up and taking everything. And he's like grinding his teeth and screaming. Well, I mean, after that, I got a bunch of people to always be around me,
It was encounters like these that left Larsen, who didn't take battling personally, embittered by some of the darker aspects of the scene.
I'm not interested in people being like mean to each other, really. That's why I don't like it at all, because it is, even though in a lot of ways it can be very fun, it kind of like has an underlying mean-spiritedness to it. That's like how you win, is by being a dick to somebody, But yeah, when people take that across the river essentially and bring it into the way they act, it's scary as hell. And that's how it is. That's why I never liked it. Backstage, that's how it is. Everyone's fucking mean-mugging each other. They won't talk to each other. They're just like trying to play the head games with people. And it's really serious for a lot of people. They're like, this is it, man. I'm fucking a better rapper than you. I was just never interested in that shit.
In his early years, Larsen's lyrics were told through a narrative he constructed. But in the midst of a 2002 tour, Larsen suffered a physical injury that changed his writing style dramatically. The
main artistic choice that I made when I started to develop some different ways of writing was when I was about 20 years old, like right after I wrote the E and A record. We were touring and stuff like that, and I broke my right hand. I'm right-handed. I broke my right hand, and so I couldn't write with my right hand because of the cast and all that shit, right?
Yeah.
So I had to learn how to write with my left hand. And when I started doing that, first of all, there is some truth to the fact that you're using a different part of your brain depending on which hand you're using, and so that started to change kind of the way that I wrote. But more specifically than that, it was frustrating because I had never written words with my left hand. To like write some really like complicated thing became frustrating because it was difficult to do. So rather than just doing this whole like very detailed story where you're telling every part of it, the man sits on the bench in November and the leaves blow, all that, I started to just go, what am I actually trying to say under there? And I started to realize, well, what I'm trying to hint at is the deeper overall emotion, the deeper thing behind the story. The reason the story exists is not necessarily the linear flow of the story. That's not necessarily the reason you're telling the story. So I realized, like, when I wrote things like Murder of Memories, what I'm really talking about is sadness and psychological kind of, I guess, the human condition, the idea of pain and suffering being the driving force for almost everything we do, from inventing the nuclear bombs to writing poetry, And so then I just started to think, all right, well, I can't even sit here and tell a story about somebody, going through all these specific things because my hand can't do it. So then I started to get to the thing where my writing just got more and more open-ended and more just like, okay, this is more imagery-based or, less detailed. I wanted the listener to become an integral part of the experience by forcing them to interpret what was being said, rather than telling them the whole story. I want them to become part of the story by having to analyze it and having to figure it out and applying their own life to it. So I thought, this took a couple of years to develop. I don't think I wrote anything that really, really hit what I was trying to do until I was about 25, 26. I mean, it took me about 10 to 15 years of writing to learn how to undo my conditioning as a writer. Mm-hmm. And so really what I've been going for the past, 6 to 8 years now, I guess, has been trying to write something that has multiple meanings. So you can apply your own experience to the experience presented in the song, and it doesn't need to match exactly for you to actually gain an emotional connection to it. Do you dig what I'm saying? You don't have to be a war vet to understand the suffering that a war vet goes through, because there's suffering inside of all of us, and that is what drives us to seek pleasure. I believe that pleasure is actually just a process of attempting to escape pain. And so, to write it in a way that has more of an interpretive kind of approach just started to make more and more sense to me. So back to your initial question, by the throat, saying something like empathy is the poor man's cocaine is more metaphor for the human thought process. And so taking a line like that, this far away, I still smell you inside of me. It's like, you can't tell. I could be talking about drug addiction. I could be talking about the end of a relationship. I could be talking about somebody dying. I could be talking about someone being born. You can't really tell. But what's important to me about that approach is that when you have someone who dies in your life, you can listen to that song, and that can be about them. You can make it about them because the writing is open. If it's about your brother coming back from the war and being screwed up, it can be about that too. It can be about a breakup, a makeup. It can be about anything,
Welcome to my private hell. There's no one to fight now. Enjoy myself. Rather drown than ask for help. I wish I was someone else. Mr. Perfect, misconstrued. Lead the way, follow through. Probably hate me, I do too. You're so much like me, I feel sorry for you. But I think you're pretty sure. You will profit, you will get hurt. I eat my words, they taste like dirt. I'm only ashamed because I know what it's worth. Find my comfort inside blame. Shove my pride back down my face. My worst habits, waking up at least once a day. Balance barefoot on a needle, heaven's just a jump away. Empathy is the poor man's cocaine, and love is just a chemical by any other name. I like the way your pheromones make me sleepy. This far away, I still smell you inside me. Empathy is the poor man's cocaine, and love is just a chemical by any other name. I like the way your pheromones make me sleepy. This far away, I still smell you inside me.
Larsen published 3 books of poetry with his grandmother, Margaret Schneider. The third book, titled Am I Wonderful, arrived from printers October 14th, 2 days before Larsen died.
So my grandma was like, well, why don't you just give me a bunch of it and let me put it out? And my grandma was also a writer. And she's never released anything, and she's always kind of been scared. And so in some ways she has lived vicariously through me and been really interested and really close to what I'm doing. But, I started to realize about a year or so ago, well, one of the reasons that you're so wrapped up in what I'm doing is because you are a writer and you've never put your stuff out. You've never actually done it. You need to do that for yourself so you can, so you can put your art out there. I mean, that is important, And so then we came up with the idea of, look, you pick a bunch of stuff that you've written I'll go through a bunch of stuff that I've written. It's not going to be anything old, and we'll mash it together and do a book, you know. And then we did the cover, which is a little sketch that I drew, but it's just the outline of the sketch, so each cover can be painted differently. And what we've done with the first run that we did for Soundset was it was all color crayon. So each cover is its own unique cover. And she wrote a foreword to the poetry book, and then it basically goes one of hers, one of mine, one of hers, one of mine, one of hers, one of mine. And then at the end they're numbered, you know, whichever edition it is. The first edition we did 50 of them. They're numbered and autographed by me and my grandmother.
Cool. So, I mean, like, is that something you think you'll continue to pursue to get her to publish more work?
Yeah, it is. I really enjoyed, you know, I just did another run, I guess, online. And I enjoy being able to put out her work through my audience. And then also it forces me to actually look at all this unused material. I mean, I probably have, you know, 300 to 400, like, I'm not exaggerating, notebooks filled with writing for my life that just never makes it anywhere, you know, because it just does. I guess I don't write as much music as I do words or whatever, you know. So it's a cool way to be able to put out my words and her words, you know, and it's gotten nothing but good reception, you know. That's the thing, is I didn't want to put her in a situation where people buy that and then they go, what the fuck, man? I thought this was going to be a battle, you know. Because she doesn't need to deal with that kind of hate.
Yeah,
so,
sure.
But it's been well received, and people kind of like the idea. They like the cover, and you know, the whole thing. So that's what's been really encouraging to continue with the process, is that it hasn't gotten too many negative reviews, I guess, you know.
After a brief hiatus, Larsen reunited with his longtime friend Max Kelchin, better known as DJ Abilities. Together, they released the final Idea and Abilities album, By the Throat, in 2009.
When we got back into making that record and got back into being a group again, I kind of was like, look, man, if I'm going to make music that's even labeled as hip-hop, I'm going to have to do it this way, because this is just a more honest way for me to make music, you know? I don't want, the older I get, I'm trying to compartmentalize less and less. I'm trying to actually integrate all these different styles and influences into one thing. And it is something that I gave up on initially when I first started doing the Carbon Carousel stuff. I gave up on that idea because it was so, people were so negative about it. I was like, yeah, fuck it. I'm going to make punk rock then and not even tell hip-hop people about it, you know? But, you know, with the E&A record, it was a little more of a attempt to bring some of the styles together so we can show the listener, it's like, yeah, it's okay to play guitars in hip hop, you know. Music is supposed to have no rules, you know. So just showing people a little bit of that, like, that's something I've always been willing to do and interested in doing. Showing people, look, don't be scared to be yourself.
End of interview. I'm so goddamn tired. Can't tell if I'm done or just uninspired. And don't give me that, you can be somebody's speech, that ain't your place. Let me be. I'm an example of a candlelit life with electric relaxation, brain trampled by devotion to remote control channel changing. Something provoked the whole globe to lower expectations. Damn, what's wrong with my generation? We was the cream of the crop, but it seems we've been robbed. That's what happens when you trade in all your dreams for a job. And every day it gets less and less exciting. I would make a difference, but I'm busy faking this instead of trying. Change my shit from now to never, and I'll pretend I'm fine. Why am I always stuck at the shitty end of the assembly line? I guess I'm built to be intoxicated with hope. Sometimes it's a journey.